Good morning everyone and welcome back to Piccadilly. Now just a fairly short video on this particular occasion. I had a couple of comments with regard to trees and scratch building of trees. Now you probably are aware that I model in N-gauge, so my trees are only going to be about that sort of size anyway, so they're not going to be massive. But I tend to use wire, which I bought from the internet. Obviously standard wire. This is 0.3 millimeters, which I would recommend. It's nice and pliable, but whatever I do here, I feel you could probably apply it to N gauge, up to O gauge, or even O gauge. But you know, I think if you do those bigger scales, then you would need a lot more wire to do it. Now, I recommend having 2 pairs of pliers, and one of those to have at least a cutting facility on it. And because my tree is only going to be that big, I'm going to choose a piece of wire which is approximately that length, twice the height of the tree. So you are going to fold that in half like that, and that becomes the height of your tree. And I suggest cut off around about 6, 7, possibly even 8 strands. So there's 2. Now you don't need to see me cutting all that, so I'll come back in a second when I've done that. Okay, there's my strands. Now the next thing I need to do is to fold them in half. When you're cutting those strands, I would try if you can to get them similar lengths, but it doesn't matter if they all come a little bit short. And with your pliers, just pinch the end together, make sure that you get a nice crisp edge, and then with one set of pliers hold onto it just like that, and the other set of pliers twist. Now I must stress, there are loads of tree making videos on the internet, as a bit come out. Loads of tree making videos. Luke Towan particularly is absolutely amazing at making trees. And if you're really serious about making a particular type of trees, I suggest you check his channel out. Luke Towan, absolutely a stunning modeler. I think he's Australian, but I can't be too sure. Anyway, so there's my trunk, twisted like that. Now decide how many main branches you want. Now in this case I'm going to go with 3, so I'm going to split these into 3 main areas and push them out in relatively even spacing, and again twist. And I'm just going to try and make it relatively tight. The reason is because you want that joint there to look good. If you've got loops in that bit there, it's going to be a bit difficult to disguise them. Now this one I'm going to take out a little bit bigger. There's no rights and wrongs in doing this, it really isn't. So I'm just going to twist that one a little bit more. Just like that. And then I'm going to twist those 2 together a little bit more as well. And it's literally just a case of see a branch and twist it. Now some of those are a little bit on the long side, so I'm just going to trim that a little bit off. And I will keep a bit of length on that one, but generally. Right, so now this one, I'm going to split that again. But I have to say I'm quite impressed with the way these do tend to turn out. I mean, at the end of the day, it's just wire. I think that will do. Actually, I'm just going to twist that round a little bit further up there like that to give the impression that those 2 are coming off. And twist these 2. Right, here we go. Now, this little setup is just my setup. You don't have to go to all this trouble, but I've just found some tin foil just to act as a bit of a a dust mat, if you like, and then a bit of cardboard so I can pick this up. I'm trying my hardest not to get anything on this board because at the end of the day I want to be able to use it for modelling, so I don't really want to damage it. Now, what I've got here is, well, some brown emulsion, which is one of these tester pots from B&Q, £3. And this is just an empty pot, which I've now filled up with PVA. Now, what I do is I take the tree, I'm holding it with the branches, and I dip it into the PVA. Now, I'm only going to do the bottom of the trunk. You might say to me, why? Well, because the foliage will cover that. Shake off the excess, like that, and then straight into the emulsion. Now, you could argue, why didn't I go straight into the emulsion with it? The reason being is because this is an acrylic paint and the tree's made of metal, and the acrylic will possibly chip off. So the PVA glue will act as a bit of a base. Now, all I'm going to do now is put that onto my tin foil. And the idea is that because that's quite a thick coat, some of it will then dribble down the branches and do the work of covering the tree for me. Okay, hopefully you can still see that. Right, once I've put each bit on, now I've just thought I might as well use these drips that have come down, so I'm literally just going to take a brush and just paint very, very briefly over the top of most of the tree. I'm just going over the significant branches. I can't see the point in going up onto the little bits. All right, like I said, I will come back once all this is dry. Right, there we go. That is all dry now. We're about a couple of hours later. It probably was dry a bit sooner than that, to be frank with you, but that's looking all right now. It's still a little bit twisty, but this is N-gauge. I'm really not that fussed. And if you can take your time to see that, well, good luck for you. Now, the next stage is applying the foliage. Now, I was using this stuff, lichen, but as you might have heard me say in the last video, this stuff, as silly as it looks, is incredibly expensive, probably because there's not a lot of it around and it's difficult to farm maybe. But a while ago I bought a 100 gram bag of this stuff, get it right, 100 grams, which was a bag about this big. Okay, stuffed full, but nevertheless 100 grams, and that cost me £5. And I'll be honest, I even went into my local model shop and saw a very similar size bag for £10. I know. But I thought there's got to be a cheaper way of doing this. So I started thinking, what could I just search in the internet for different things? And this sphagnum moss came up. And I thought, well, it's worth a look. This stuff is 2 kilograms, so that's 2,000 grams, and it cost me £6.50 from B&Q. If it works, it's a no-brainer. Now, granted, there are some big bits in it, and for N-gauge they might be a little bit too big, particularly those little bits there. But there's lots of other bits in it which would be about right. Now, obviously I won't leave it looking like a spider's web, but at the end of the day, you know, if it works, it's got to be worth a go, isn't it? So what I've got for glue, I was using PVA to glue the foliage material to this, but in actual fact, when I come to put the flocks on and then sprayed it with a wetter PVA, it didn't work very well and everything just fell off. So I'm using this stuff. Other brands are available, but I'm literally just going to dip that in there, let it drip off all the way around like that. Just let it drip, get rid of the excess, and what I'm going to do is literally just plunge it into that foliage there like that. Yes, this does look a complete disaster, don't worry, everything will be fine. Just grab hold of these bits and I'm just literally taking a hold of the foliage and letting it stick on. I'm just going to screw that bit up like that. Just checking where it's still a bit tacky, so I'm just taking some more moss, screwing it up. Incidentally, the moss comes wet because obviously it's used for hanging baskets, so I did have to dry it out, which did take quite a while. I left a load outside in the sun, and it did work, but it took around about 6 hours to dry. But I thought I'll try putting an amount, and it was this amount, as you can see here, for in the oven for half an hour. If you don't mind doing that sort of thing. Some people don't like putting something other than food in the oven. But my thing is it's not going to touch the food, so I'm not going to worry. But there we go. And I think, I mean, it's not a perfect tree, but for end gauge, that's perfectly fine for me. And I'd be quite happy with that, the shape of it anyway. Not that I wouldn't put that on the layout as it is, don't get me wrong. And I also must say that there are lots of other ways of making trees, and if you've got a way which makes a more realistic tree or a better tree for you, go for it. Some people like those plastic trees from China, don't they? But for me, that's not the best. Right, next stage is to take a hold of this stuff. Now, I was looking around thinking about what I could use, and this is green emulsion, a bit of brown emulsion, and then PVA, and obviously watered down. You can see the consistency I've got. Now, oh, and a tiny little bit of washing up liquid as well, just to help break up any water tension, to help it flow through better. Now, some people would say I should spray that with water first. I've experimented with lots of different ways. I've tried putting it in a spray. You know, these old kitchen detergent bottles or kitchen cleaners, that type of thing. And this was a tiny little bit thick, and it clogged it up. So I ended up spending the next 15 minutes trying to clean it all out, and vowed that I wouldn't bother with it anymore. So trying to think of what else could I do. I could literally just do that, but what tends to happen is the stuff just tend to move about quite a lot, and you end up with lots of dangly bits. Quite a lot of dangly bits, and obviously that gets soaked if I do that. So what I decided to do was just use a spoon and just tip it on. Now, I'm not saying there won't be any dangly bits, but it's not quite as bad as it would be if I just dip it. So I'm going to do the underside first. Now, some of you might be saying, well, why am I doing this at all? Purely because the sphagnum moss is more of a wheaty, yellowy, creamy colour. And whilst you do get trees that sort of colour, generally speaking, they're more green. So I'm literally just going to tip it on over the top. This is why when I stuck it on with the glue, the contact adhesive glue, I pressed quite hard. So I'm now just going to tip it on onto the top, like so. And obviously I'm doing it over the... Right, well, as you can see, this stuff is still dripping everywhere. But take your favourite flock. This just happens to be one of the Woodland Scenics ones I picked up at Worley. Bachmann tend to do a starter pack, and I think it was £6. I think 6 or 8 anyway. And the amount you get is just brilliant. So I thought I might as well. And you get a huge bag of this one, which is the mid-green blend. But again, use your favourite, it's not a problem. Now, gently doing the underside first, just getting the sprinkle right. Just going all the way around, all the way around, all the way around, just not putting too heavy a coat on the bottom. But obviously I want to cover up the majority bits. Right, turning over. Just gently turning it. I mean, the thing with trees is the fact that they're not, there's no two exactly the same. It's a bit like your fingerprinting trees, isn't it? They are all very, very different. Okay, now, it's like I said before, it's not perfect. Oops, and that bit is being a little bit stubborn, but I'd be quite happy with that going on the layout now. Some of you might think, oh my life, what a complete site. Well, if you feel it's a complete site, but you don't have to do it this way, it's up to you. At the end of the day, we all have a choice of what we do. And I think it's not, when trees are concerned, it's not all about one tree anyway. It's about a number of trees together. And if you use a different coloured phlox over the top, every single one of those pieces of phlox represents a leaf. So, you know, I'm more than happy with that, to be quite frank with you. And you can do different colours. I've got some other slight greens. I've got some more of a sandy orange colour, which I'm going to do one or two trees in that. And, or even what you could do is just sprinkle some tiny little bits on the top just to represent some blossom. I've got some sawdust here, which I went to my local timber merchant a while ago, and I just said, any chance of having some? He said, yeah, you can have as much as you want. And he gave me a huge bag full. So I'm just going to take a tiny little bit on my fingers and just sprinkle a tiny bit on the top. Not too much, just a little bit. And that could represent a type of flower, if you like. Or blossom. Somebody said to me the other day, does New Mills have trees that produce blossom? And in fact, I don't know, but I could use that in New Mills, couldn't I? There we are. I've just finished making all these trees about 5 minutes ago. Now, the one thing I do want to point out to you is, in the first glance, you'll see they're all very, very similar, but when you look really carefully, you can see there are subtle differences in between each one. I'd say there's about 5 different colours here. Okay, so it just goes to show that you don't have to spend a large amount of money, £10 for 3 trees. You can make them for 10, 20 pence just by using sphagnum moss, wire, a bit of emulsion, water, washing up liquid, and scatters. And you could even make the scatters yourself as well if you're so inclined with sawdust. But me personally, I like to buy those. All right, anyway, I hope you found that informative. And please do like, subscribe, and whatever else you feel you want to do. If you want to comment, please do. This may not be your thing, and that's absolutely fine. But anyway, take care. See you soon. Bye for now.